Hello. I don't think I'll ever get used to how quickly it gets dark here. How early it gets dark. All right. So, just getting things set up. Seem to be frozen on Instagram. Oh well. If you're watching me on Instagram, I apologize. Or maybe it's normal for you and it's just freezing for me. I have no idea. Weird. All right. How's everyone doing this Sunday? I think if you're in South Africa, it is sunny and warm. And here in the Netherlands, it is pretty cold and dark, as you can see. So I'd love to know, since we're talking about goals today, I'd love to know what your general feeling about goals are. And you're welcome to drop an emoji in the comments that describes how you generally feel about goals. I don't know why Instagram is being weird. Yeah, while I'm waiting for that to work and for anyone who still wants to join, let me know in the meantime what your general feeling about goals are. General feeling is what feelings are. Like, yay, goal setting. Or are you more kind of meh, don't really set goals? Or you're like, oh my gosh, please no. No to goals. Let me know your emojis in the comments. We're just chatting about how we feel about goals first. And you can let me know what general feelings the idea of setting goals evokes for you. And I'll just wait another minute or so for people to join. So I'm Sarah, health and career coach for women clinicians. And in this video, we're going to be talking about goals for growth. So the reason that I talk about it as a goals for growth idea and not just goals is I tend to find that people, when they're setting goals, it either is like kind of random, like we're just kind of picking something that we feel maybe we should want or could want or something, feeling like we should just have a goal, especially when it's nearing New Year's time, that we feel, okay, should we just jump on this kind of goal wagon? And so we just want to look at goals from a slightly different perspective today, and realizing that we don't necessarily have to wait for the new year or do this for a new year. It doesn't have to be time of the year, related to the time of the year, right? It can just be about where do we actually want to start growing next. And I think it's important to remember that as adults, we are still developing, we are still growing. A lot of the time we think that our development stops around adolescence or something. And our adult development, we don't really, take note of, or I guess do very deliberately. It's almost kind of a little bit haphazard. And if we're doing that, it's more related to various aspects of our life. It's not necessarily thinking of it in the sense of I'm still growing and developing as an adult. What kind of skills do I need to develop? What kind of psychological tools do I need to learn how to use? All right, so we're going to be talking about goals from this perspective. So thinking about what kind of growth would you want in the next while? if it helps you to think of a few months, if it helps you to think of a year, whatever kind of time frame. But what kind of growth are you looking for in the next while? And if it helps you to have something specific, like let's say you have a practice and you have a certain, let's say, patient goal, or you have a revenue goal, or you have an impact goal. Maybe you want to have certain speaking arrangements, workshops. Maybe you want to do a few talks. Maybe you want to do certain amount of networking events. Maybe you want to grow your network by a certain amount, whatever it is, depending on what's important to you and what you would like to have and build in the next while. What could you look at in the sense of, what do I need to, how do I need to grow in order to do that better? So what do I need to get better at in order to achieve that? So you're welcome to put in the comments anything that you think of. This can either be, like I said, a very specific goal that you're wanting to achieve, or it can be in the sense of, what do I need to get better at in order to do that? It's quite important to do both. From the one side, if we are choosing an area that we want to grow in, we also want to know why that's important to us. We want to know that it is important to us, right? It can't be just sort of like something that we feel, it would be nice if I grew in this direction. It has to be important to us and desired. And on the other aspect, like I was saying, if we just kind of pick a random thing that we want to achieve, we might not be relating it back to, this is an area that I want to grow in, or this is the way that I want to grow. So I'm going to use an example for me, and I'm going to use my coaching practice as an example. So I would like to do in the next year 5 workshops, so live workshops. In other words, like speaking events or some kind of live workshop. So that is the goal that I want. And the growth that needs to happen, or the thing that I need to get better at in order to do that, is reaching out to people and requesting speaking engagements, right? Or workshops. So I need to get better at reaching out to people, or networking, or, getting my message out there. So, hey, Peter. So we want to be choosing a growth goal in the sense of, what do I want to get better at? And we want to be thinking about, why is that meaningful to us? What is that going to help us? For example, in your practice, is there a certain goal, specific goal that you would like to achieve in your practice in the next, let's say, 6 months to a year? And then what do you need to get better at in order to achieve that? And what we're going to do with that is, we're going to take it through what's called an immunity map. So this is something I learned from my own coach, Dr. Sasha Hines. She's amazing. She is a psychologist and life coach. And it was adapted from the immunity map from Robert Keegan and Lisa Leahy. So essentially what it's looking at is looking at our commitments, our goals, what we want to do, and we're looking at then how our psychological immune system kind of comes up against that. So it's the idea of, you feel like you have one foot on the gas pedal and one foot on the brake when it comes to your behavior. You really want to achieve this thing. You really want your practice to be at this stage, or you really want to have speaking engagements, or you want to do workshops, or you want to network, right? But then for some reason, you seem to not be able to do that. For some reason, you're kind of putting on the brakes on that. And we want to explore what that is, what is behind that. Because we can get really frustrated with our own behavior and think like, all I need to do is just do X, Y, Z, right? It's that kind of like, just do it mentality. And that doesn't really work for goals. So that's what we're going to take that goal through. So think of something that you'd like to work on in the coming while, something that you would like to get better at, and we will take it through that map. You're welcome to let me know in the comments if you want any feedback on your goal, if that's the kind of goal we're looking for, and whether it will fit within this map, and maybe we can adjust it a little bit in order to make it easier to take through this map. Okay, so I'm going to use the example of my own map for this goal that I've chosen. So let's say 5 speaking engagements in the coming year. And in order to get better at that, or in order to achieve that, I need to get better at putting myself out there, spreading my message, networking with people, getting to know people, meeting new people, talking about what I do. So the first thing we want to identify is when you look at this commitment. So you can think of it as a commitment to getting better at this thing. So for me, I'm committed to getting better at putting myself out there. I'm just going to use a general term like that, putting myself out there. Think about what are you doing and not doing that is going in opposition to that. So what behaviors are directly in opposition to this goal that you supposedly want to achieve, right? The things that make it seem so strange, the things that you're frustrated by. Like, for example, for me, that could be I'm not reaching out to new people. I'm not going to events to meet new people. I am maybe, what am I doing? I'm maybe doing other things that are not that. So anything that feels sort of like, I'm still working on my practice, my coaching practice, but I'm not specifically putting myself out there. So maybe I'm doing admin work, or maybe I'm, making notes, or maybe I'm learning something. And these all seem kind of productive, but then they're in opposition to this goal because it's not doing what I want to get better at. So list anything that you find that are things that you are doing or not doing that are in opposition to this commitment that you have. So I'm committed to getting better at this, but I'm doing these things or not doing these things, and that's kind of in opposition to that. So you can also think about, if I had a video camera on you, what would I see you doing instead of this thing? What in the time that you would be doing this thing, what are you doing instead? Or what are you avoiding that would be helping you get to that goal, right? So anything you're doing or not doing that's in opposition to this commitment that you have. And you're welcome to add them to the comments as well. It's always great to see. My coach used to say this is like when you tell on yourself. Like, she says she wants to be doing this, but this is what she's been doing. Okay, so then we want to take those behaviors. So look at that list of everything you're doing and not doing, all these things that are actually in opposition to the thing that you're committing to get better at. Look at that list of things and think about this. If you had to do the opposite of that, what are you dreading? What are you scared of? What do you think might happen? What are you worrying about? So for me, for example, if I was to reach out to a certain amount of people every day, if I was to send a presentation and to various hosts of events and say, would you like me to speak to your events? If I was to go to networking events, if I was to post about, I'd like to have speaking engagements, whatever it is. If I had to do those things, what am I scared of? What would I dread about doing that? What makes me feel like, oh my gosh, no, I can't do that, right? And that's what you want to put in this area. What are you worrying about? What are you dreading? And so for me, that might be something like, I'm going to be rejected, or people are going to think that I'm not qualified to speak on that topic, or it's kind of like a who are you to speak on that, right? Maybe that people are going to criticize me or judge me or think certain things of me, right? What am I worrying about? What am I dreading if I had to do the opposite of those behaviors? Again, you're welcome to share with me. We all have similar things that we worry about, things that we dread about doing certain things. Okay. So once you've got your dreads, like, this is what I'm worried about. I'm worried about getting rejected, or I'm worrying about people thinking this of me, or I'm worried about failing, or I'm worried about whatever it is. We want to take those dreads and those worries and turn them into competing commitments. So, for example, if I say, I'm worried about being rejected, right? Let's say I send my proposal to someone for a speaking engagement, and they say, no, we don't want you to speak at our event, right? That's a rejection. And my competing commitment then is I'm committed to not being rejected, right? So I have this commitment of I want to get better at putting myself out there, but I also have a competing commitment that says I'm committed to not being rejected by people, right? It could be competing commitments of I'm committed to not risking failure. I'm committed to not risking rejection. I'm committed to not feeling a certain way. I'm committed to not having my identity of a successful person threatened, right? Whatever it is, think of those dreads that you have. You're protecting yourself against those things happening. And those are your competing commitments. So anything that's coming against that commitment that you have, those are your competing commitments. And my coach also likes to say that we want to put these in a way that's not noble. So, for example, we don't put it as I'm committed to being successful, right? We put it as I'm committed to not risking failure, because it's a very protective behavior. It's not just like, oh, I have high standards and I don't want to, I want to be successful and I want to achieve things, right? It's not noble. It's protective. So I'm protecting myself against the risk of failure, for example, or the risk of rejection. There's cats in the background making a noise. Okay, so we have our competing commitments, and these are often, before we elaborate on them in this way, they can often be hidden from us. So these are our subconscious protective competing commitments, right? We may not necessarily be aware of them, but this is what our psychological immune system is doing. It's protecting us against these perceived threats. So when we have our competing commitments, we want to start looking at what are the actual big assumptions underlying these competing commitments, right? So in the example that I gave, one of my big assumptions might be, if someone rejects me, I won't be able to handle that. Or if someone rejects me, I will think a certain way about what I do and my value, right? Or another big assumption could be, if I talk to people about what I do, or I put myself out there, that I'm going to be rejected. Let me think of another one. Maybe in a different area to the one that I'm thinking of. Like, let's say it's a success thing, right? Like, let's say you want your practice to be at a certain level. Maybe you frame that in terms of a certain revenue, right? Just as an example, because it's an easy one to kind of think about. If you are, you'd have to do a certain amount of behaviors, and you have certain dreads on doing that. And maybe one of your dreads is that you don't want to risk failing. And so you might have the big assumption underneath that it's better to, not try it all and fail that way than to actually try and still not meet my goal, right? So underlying assumptions about that dread or that competing commitment. So start to identify what are your underlying beliefs and assumptions that are driving those hidden competing commitments. And often it's like if I do X, Y is going to happen. That's already an assumption. And then I often find like part of our assumption is, if that thing that we are dreading had to happen, we are often making a lot of assumptions about how bad that would be, how much we wouldn't be able to handle that, or how much it would mean to us. So there's a lot of assumptions in that realm as well. And again, you're welcome to share any of the underlying assumptions and beliefs that you've identified. And essentially what we want to start doing with these big assumptions and these competing commitments is firstly just recognizing that this is why it feels so impossible. This is why certain behaviors just seem so frustrating and so illogical. They are not illogical. When we start to examine them a little bit closer, we can see what is happening. We can see what we are protecting ourselves against. And we can see that it makes total sense, right? If we think we are going to be rejected by essentially what we see as our social tribe, right? We can see how that would be something that we'd protect ourselves against. If we are protecting us, if we see what we're doing as risking failure, as risking identity, an identity that we have of being successful or being resilient or being whatever it is, if there's a certain identity that we are resisting, we can see how our psychological immune system would want to protect us from that. So just firstly, understanding that this is how your behavioral system works. This is how your psychological immune system works. And you're not crazy, you're not lazy, you're not unmotivated. You have a strong protective psychological immune system that wants you to stay safe. It doesn't necessarily want you to thrive and be successful and get the most out of life. It wants to make sure that you stay safe and that you protect yourself from these actual or perceived threats. So the second thing that we can start doing, once we have our big assumptions, we can start to look at examining these a little bit closer, right? We have this big assumption. For example, my big assumption could be, if I'm rejected from a speaking engagement, I will not be able to handle that rejection, right? I will feel so, low, or I will feel so badly about myself, and I will make it mean something about me as a person or professionally that I should stop reaching out, right? It's going to cause almost like an end to my career if I get rejected, right? All these kind of big assumptions behind how much it's going to mean to me if I get rejected from a speaking engagement. So what we want to do is start examining whether or not and to what extent this is true. And we don't want to immediately just go and do that when we are feeling protective, right? We don't want to force ourselves to go and do this thing that feels unsafe, because often we just do it in a way that's so blunt and so direct, and then without our kind of ways that we've established to cope with it. And then we go, see what happens when I do that, right? So we don't want to just kind of jump into this, jump off the cliff, right? We want to start in very small ways, just examining this underlying assumption. And we do this in a way that's very safe. We're not putting ourselves at risk. We're not putting up our protective mechanisms, right? We're doing it in a way that feels safe. And usually the way that feels pretty safe to most of us is to just journal about it, to write about it a little bit. So look at this big assumption and start to look at, when has this been true in my life? When did I reach out for something and connect with someone and get rejected? How did I feel? When wasn't it true, right? When did I reach out and put myself out there and didn't get rejected, right? Let's get a bit of evidence for the contrary. And you can start to, from that place of just exploring it, you can then do little like mini steps in that direction in a way that is, again, it feels safe to you. So you're not feeling like you're taking this giant leap, but you're just trying to show your psychological immune system like, it's okay, there's no threat, we're safe, and you're with yourself on every step of that journey, and trusting that you will get to that goal, but you're not going to get to it by forcing yourself through these protective mechanisms, right? We're with ourselves on this journey. We're making sure that we feel safe, and we're doing it in small steps that feel manageable to us. So that was the immunity map. I'd love to know if there's anything that you struggled with that, or anything that you'd just like to brainstorm with me on. You're welcome to reach out to me. It's quite a lot, and it can take a while to get the hang of it. In the beginning, it sounds a bit complex, but once you get the hang of it, it's really easy, and it gives us so much information about what's going on, and gives us so much self-compassion as well. Two other ideas that I wanted to talk about in terms of our goals that might be helpful for you is, one of them is the future you idea. So thinking about this goal that you have, right? Let's say for me, I'm the person who has already done 5 speaking engagements or workshops in the coming year, right? Maybe I've already done that. Who is that person? Who is the you that's already achieved that goal? What does she think? What does she believe? How does she behave? How does she carry herself? How is she different to you? And how can you actually be that you now, right? How can you be that version of you in pursuing the goal now? So just connecting with that identity, that identity of the person who has already achieved what you want to achieve, who already has what you want to achieve. How are they different? How do they behave, think, speak, carry themselves? And then how can you embody that version of you in your everyday life, in your pursuit of this goal and this growth? And the second idea is just the idea that we want to plan for obstacles. So like I alluded to in the beginning, often we just think about it as, I'm just going to do it, right? We set a goal and we just think, I'm just going to do it, right? I'm just going to reach out to people. I'm going to book those events and that's it, right? I'm just going to do it. And this idea is planning for if something didn't go right, if I didn't manage to get those, if I got rejected or I booked 2 instead of 5, whatever it is, right? If I didn't meet that goal that I had, what are the most likely reasons that would happen? What are the obstacles that you can already foresee in the way of that, right? For example, if you are wanting to become, let's say you want to exercise more regularly, you already know, right? If you think ahead of time, and you think to the idea of you're going to, maybe you've done a few days of exercising and tomorrow you've committed to exercising again, and you get up really early and it's cold and you're exhausted from the next day, right? You know what that feels like. You know what kind of obstacles are probably going to come up in your way. And this idea is about thinking about those obstacles and actually making a plan for them. Actually saying, if XYZ happens, this is how I'm going to handle that. And maybe that means, I'm going to give myself, 2 days that if I'm feeling kind of cold and tired and whatever it is, I'm going to give myself the day off. Or you say, this is how I'm going to handle that. If I'm lying in bed and I'm feeling cold and tired and don't want to get up, this is how I'm going to handle that situation in order to make sure that I still go and exercise. Whatever the plan is, the contingency plan, the concept is that you're foreseeing those obstacles. You're looking ahead of time and seeing what is most likely going to come in my path, and I'm already making a plan for that, so that when they come up, it's no surprise, and you already know what your plan was around that. So I hope these ideas are helpful for you. You're welcome to, as I said, reach out regarding any of these ideas, and we can brainstorm your goal. And it doesn't need to be something that you start on 1st of January. It can be something that you already start working on your growth goal now. What kind of growth do you want to have? That can be personal or professional, but either way, whether it's a professional goal or something in another realm of your life, it still needs to be meaningful from a personal perspective. Like, I want to grow in this way. I want to psychologically be better at doing this. I want to commit to growing this in this direction, or building these skills, or whatever it is. So have a great Sunday, guys. Let me know your goals, and let me know anything that kind of came up for you as you were exploring these different concepts and ideas. And I will chat to you soon.